What are some toxic family stories that weigh you down? My dad wants to keep track of me. He wants me to send him my location when I go out, and wants to keep a key to my apartment. I am a female in my early 20s and have been living on my own since September, when I finally had the opportunity to leave my mom's awful home. I love living alone, but for the past month my dad and his wife have been staying with me, while they look for their own place. They recently moved up here from Texas about a month and a half after I did. This isn't really a problem as they're mostly here due to work and keep the place clean, and are respectful of my space. Lately, my dad has been telling me that whenever I go out I need to send him my location in case he needs to come get me. Like, I get where he's coming from, but it also makes me feel like I'm back at my mother's house having to tell her every time I want to go out and where I am going to be. I do not want to tell my dad where I am going to be, and I do not want to have to tell him when I am going to go out because it's none of his business what I do in my spare time. Another thing is that he wants to keep a key to my apartment, and he wants his wife to keep one too. They each already have one since they have been staying with me, and need to come and go, but they get the keys to their place tomorrow, and I want mine back. He also says he wants to give me a key to his place, but I am honestly good without. I'm 99% sure they would never come in without my permission, but I don't want to worry about things like that ever. Am I overreacting here? I want him to give me my keys back, but I feel like a swine just thinking about telling him, and like everyone will be mad at me. Also, is it normal for parents to ask their adult children to report every time they go out? For more clarification, I know where my dad is coming from and I know that he's worried about me, but he was never a big part of my life growing up, and now he wants to play catch up. I don't want anyone to have access to my home except myself and my landlord. I have been handling things on my own, and don't want to depend on him for anything because then everyone will say that I owe him. It has happened before, and I don't want it to happen again. He never even asked me if he could have the key to my apartment. He just said me and my wife are each keeping a key to your place after we move out in case there is an emergency or you need something that we can get for you. He then changed the subject so quickly I didn't even have time to object. He jokes about how I better not have anyone in the apartment, my apartment, and he also jokes about hitting me as punishment if I do anything wrong, and then gets offended when I say that no, he won't be putting his hands on me. He gets upset because I'm talking back, and he is my father. When he got here the first thing he said to me was that he wanted me to break the lease for my apartment, and move in with him and his wife, and that it would be the same as living alone because I would have my own room. He's very inquisitive about my love and intimate life, and I can't even tell him it's none of his business because he gets upset, and goes and calls one of my family members to tell them I'm being mean to him. How do I handle this? Narcissist brother tells kids I am a thief. He lied to his kids about having a college fund. Now that they're going to college, he tells them I stole it. So the jerk I am related to by womb and sperm is less than 1 year older than me. We have a narcissist mother, and he was GC. I was scapegoat. Everyone in the family remembers how I was abused by her, and he was favored. I got the better end of the stick. He was spoiled and I was abused. I left home in my late teens, and never looked back. He's a pathological liar, and his stories would blow you away, like the time SeaWorld wanted him to do a necropsy on a dead whale. He's not a marine biologist of any sort, and SeaWorld is a marine research facility, or whatever. Insert opinions here, but it has the means to hire the right guy for that job, yet he insisted they called on him for this. In actuality, he was covering up for having an affair which gave his wife chlamydia when she was 9 months pregnant. He's an a-hole. He has lied to his kids about every aspect of his work, and life, and past. They used to believe him. Like he would say, "My dad used to own that building." While driving down a highway, I was like, "No, your dad worked at Domino's Pizza when he lived here." Now the time for the college fund is almost here, and the crap hit the fan, and they are starting to see that he was a liar. Dear nephew is going off to college next year. His jerk dad has always said he had a college fund. Well, it's time to disclose how much money is in it, and he can't do that because it never existed. So he's told him that I took the money for my education saying I would pay it back, and never did. I have been on my own since I first left home, and I paid my own way through 3 degrees with no help from anyone, but my husband. I have never taken 1 cent from that a-hole. I haven't even talked to him in 25 years other than a couple words a year when we're in the same house. I want so badly to be there for those kids. I love them dearly, and their mom and I are close. She left him this year. They are starting to see through his lies, but they will spend their whole lives teasing out what might have been true, and what was not. This is a plausible lie because I've been in school for so many years, and still am. His former wife told me he said this. She said the kids can't know I know this because they weren't supposed to say anything to her, and she doesn't want to betray their trust. I don't want to betray her confidence or say anything to the kids where they will have to wonder if I am a liar. I have already caused drama that was hard for them by enforcing boundaries with toxic mom on behalf of my kids when my niece and nephew visited, which she took out on them because their mom was not there to protect them. I have been upfront with everyone about my version of the truth in all situations. I hope they at least suspect I didn't steal their college funds. I'm sick about this. I want to be there for my niece and nephew as they transition into adulthood, and away from the sickness that is their grandmother and father, but I don't know how, or if they even trust me. Toxic in-laws manipulated my ex to get back with me so I can be their surrogate. I'm sorry this is going to be a long story, but I really need to tell someone about it. Please forgive my writing, I'm an emotional wreck at this moment. On to my story. So, my brother and I are in our mid-30s. We have always known since we were kids that I was going to carry his children when it came time. It started as a joke when we were teens when our friends talked about kids, and what we were going to be when we grew up. My brother always said that he wanted to have a lot of kids, and since he is gay it was known to us that it wouldn't be through traditional methods. So when we talked about it, even if it wasn't serious, he would always say I would bear his bio kids for him, and I would always answer that I would without a doubt. Now let me clarify that our bond is extremely strong. We are each other's safe place, and we would take a bullet for the other without a second thought. Our father died when we were very young. We were left poor to the point of not knowing when we were going to have our next meal, and our mother went into year-long phases of depression, and got sick, so we only had each other to lean on. His coming out to her was a total disaster that fortunately the three of us managed to recover from, with me picking up the pieces of what was left to patch up, and glue back together, along with other serious family issues, but we survived, and we are stronger. Time passed, he and I fought, and studied hard to get good college scholarships, work, and get it through university, and that was what separated us physically. We went to study in different states across the country, but that never really made us grow apart. We have talked literally every day, and still do to this day. Through all of that we started building his kid plan. He intended to adopt a couple of kids, and have two of his own, and together we decided both our timing to do it. Financial matters, medical matters, legal matters, everything. I was a fence sitter about children of my own until I traveled to do business for the company I worked for my first job. I was only an assistant then, but I decided then and there that children were not for me. I wanted to focus on my career, and build a life for myself child-free. In college I met my ex-BF. When I was still a fence sitter, my ex knew about my thoughts on my career, and he truly seemed to admire it given my background. He and his family were well off, not crazy rich, upper middle class I'd say. His family had problems with his younger brother, a teen at the time. His grades were very low, his parents even paid some teachers to pass him. My ex would get calls at random hours to pick him up at various places, bars, clubs, even in different states, and my ex would always go, and I totally backed him up because I would do the same for mine. When I realized we were for real, about 1 year into the relationship, I told ex-husband about the fact that I was going to be a surrogate for my brother in 10 years or so. He seemed fine, and told me it was fine. He had met my brother by then, and by the time I decided to be child-free I also told him, and he agreed, and even said he was proud of me and my dedication to my career. 5 years went on, we grew strong. He moved into my rented apartment after I graduated, got a better job in another company, got a master's, got a doctorate. He worked on his career as well, got his own degrees. We both traveled, for fun, and for business it was a dream. He was a dream. His brother became an entitled person, always pulling his strings to make everyone do as he wished. In fact, they had several family trips which the whole trip plan had to be changed to accommodate his requests, and I was even cut out of some so this or that friend of his could go instead. I kept my thoughts to myself. I wasn't offended or anything. It didn't really matter. We could travel together later. In the meantime my brother became a lawyer, got a serious boyfriend who's also a lawyer, and later on they got engaged. I was in my mid-20s when it all started to fall apart. My ex invited me to dinner with his parents and his brother. He proposed that night. I was wonderstruck, and said yes. My ex-future mother-in-law was happy as well, but at some point into the dinner they started on about grandchildren. They knew about my choice. I reinforced that. They, even ex-BF, brushed it off lightly, saying I'd change my mind and I'd have to settle down in life, and eventually switch the suit for a dress. I was offended, but way too happy with the engagement to be firm enough at the time. This led to fights, and led to me getting baby clothes as gifts from the in-laws. I stood up for myself every time, which made his family call me names, us never setting a date for the wedding, and his mother embarrassing me in family events. Until ex-husband finally dropped the card I was expecting him to drop, that I would carry a child for my brother, but not for him. I told him many times of how the process would go, and that once the child was out in the world he wouldn't have contact with them. I was gonna be an aunt, not a mother, and that was that. He said he wouldn't be taking care of a pregnant woman that wasn't with his child, and I said I understood, and didn't expect him to, and he wouldn't have to stay with me or pay for anything during the pregnancy. That was all taken care of, and he was aware. He dropped the subject. Months later the company he worked for offered him an 18-month job in another state, and he would be away for the time, and then back at his old job when he came back, and he took it. I had been confiding all this to my brother, and once we got the news about my ex-husband we hurried to see if I could go through the pregnancy during this time. My brother and his husband had 3 adopted kids already, and were eager to complete the family. It was almost close to the time we had previously settled anyways, if a little too earlier, but we could work it out. I told my ex-BF. He got mad, then he threw me out and said I had betrayed him, and went away a week later, never once contacting me. I was in a really bad place, blacked out of social media, and cut contact with his family, but all for the medical procedure was ready by then. My brother said it was okay if I didn't want to do it, but I did. I got pregnant really fast. My mom came to live with me, and help. She was overjoyed. I had never seen her so happy. But she had been sick, and eventually died while I was still pregnant. That hit me like a sledgehammer. The rest of the pregnancy was hard, and I delivered my niece a month later, and although it was hard, she had to be in NICU for a while. She was very healthy. My brother and his husband were with me the entire delivery. They were the first to spend time with her and feed her. I did not had a lot of contact with her or breastfeed, but we 3 agreed she would be named after my mom, which was just so important to me. For the first year, we agreed I wouldn't see my niece often to let her bond with her dads, and I decided to donate my breast milk. I focused on myself, job, body, and mind for that time, and 3 months later I was in better shape than I had ever been in life, and I was feeling myself all over again, and got back to social media. My ex-husband got back, and contacted me and said he wanted to talk, and apologize. I agreed because I still loved him, and he was so sweet to me. We ended up in my apartment. He saw the bottles of labeled breast milk, and hell broke loose. He thought it was impossible for me to have been pregnant with the body I was showing in that short period of time. He thought I hadn't gone through it, and he called me every name under the sun again. And for the second time he left. I was angry. I had had enough. I applied for a lesser position in my job just so I could get away, because I knew I was weak for that man and I needed to get out. So I traveled the world working for the company, and climbing up positions again. By the end of last year the company offered me an executive director's position for an entire division in my home country, in the state I lived for so long, and knew a bunch of people. I took it. And in May I got a call. That man. So many years later, I, like the most stupid person I know, answered the call, and agreed to meet him. We met, and he was different, sad. He told me how he got married, but never forgot me, and how his ex-wife got pregnant with a child that wasn't his, and how he'd been divorced for 2 years, and never dated anyone, thinking of me, and loved me even when I was away, and how he wanted to be with me, no conditions, no kids, on the terms we had always agreed before. I said I needed to think, and he said he would respect my space, and my time, and I appreciated it. A week later I was like, F it, he is the love of my life and I will be with him. I was at work, and so I waited until lunch break to text him to meet me that night. When I was taking my cell phone to text him I saw another text. I recognized his brother's name, and the text went like this: Hey OP. How are you doing? We heard that you and ex-BF are back together, and the family is so happy. Me and my wife are so very happy for you guys too. Long rant about the personal struggles he and his wife were going through. And we are trying to have a child for over a year, and just discovered neither of us can have children, so when we heard you guys were back together we thought you both could be our surrogates, together. Isn't that awesome? He is my brother, you already have experience with it, and we have already discussed everything with ex-BF, and he agreed. You guys will give us the ultimate gift. Let's video chat to settle everything this evening. What do you think? My entire world shattered. I didn't answer. I blocked him, ex-BF, and every possible member of their family that could still reach me. I didn't know what to think. I wanted to cry so bad, but could not in the office, so I went on with my day, and cried myself to sleep like a weak idiot. I didn't tell my brother. He and his husband don't deserve this. They don't need to feel guilty about something they're not, and I just don't have anyone else. The following month the world got quarantined with this pandemic mess, and I'm stuck in my new apartment. I've been getting message requests from accounts I don't know about the matter, and I know it's them. They've switched from anger to begging to guilt tripping so many times by now that I'm not sure what to do. I don't think ex-BF is a part of these messages, but I didn't know what to do anymore. The messages stopped a couple days ago strangely. That brings us to today. My apartment bell rang, but I wasn't expecting anyone. The building doesn't have a doorman because it's all digitally secured. The elevator only opens into the apartments, there's only one per floor, with authorization. And you have to have fingerprint recognition to enter or to authorize anyone in. I looked through my windows, and sure enough there are the 5 of them ex-BF. Ex-mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, and whom I assume is his wife 36 floors down on the street by the building gate. It's been hours, and they keep buzzing me as I write this. How do they know my address? I don't know. How they got here? I don't know. I don't care. They are not getting in. I'm crying. But they won't get to see it. At some point they will give up. I just wished for a second that I could have had that love, you know? Here's an update. 72 hours have passed since the incident of their whole family showing up at my door to try and force me to agree to surrogate for my ex-brother-in-law, and his wife who I don't even know. The issue has been resolved, and here are some answers to questions I received. 1. I don't live in the USA. 2. My brother and his husband live in another state with their family, and that is the reason I can't go stay with them. 3. Here where I live surrogacy cannot be used for profit. The parents can pay for the woman's medical and legal care, but it's against the law to surrogate for money. The woman must do this by free will. It is the least to admit that I was taking the issue with my ex and ex-in-laws way more lightly than I should have when the situation happened, and that I was blinded by my emotions and not thinking with a clear head. Well, upon getting feedback, I got really concerned if I was making the right decisions regarding my integrity and those surrounding me. As many of you suggested, I contacted my brother and his husband, who were both lawyers, and as expected my brother flipped up. I swear I've never seen him curse and yell so much in my entire life. What I didn't expect was for my brother-in-law to get even madder, calling my ex and ex-in-laws monsters and everything else, and saying, and I quote, if they touch a single string of hair of his little sister, they would never see the sun rise again. He is an only child, and we have an amazing relationship. But I never knew I meant so much to him. Then my young nephew came running in with an arrow toy and saying he'd kill the monsters. In that moment I broke down crying on that video call, and was barely able to discuss the matter professionally with them. So we just talked for hours, and we all went to sleep so we could start dealing with it in the morning. The next morning, yesterday, they called me right after breakfast with everything ready, start to a legal trail with a following prosecution. I don't think they slept at all. They had already called a friend lawyer who lives in my state, and specialist in women harassment clauses, and they would work with her as a team. So together we decided to go with my country's version of a cease and desist notification, and upon any tries for contact we were ready to report for cyberbullying. I did also report them to the local authorities for breaking the quarantine, which cannot be used as a personal claim, but can weigh on them legally. In further conversation with them it was noted that I made a good call by ignoring them in every way, and formed to attest that I didn't engage in any of their agreements, and that from now only my lawyers were to be contacted by them. They were also worried any of them would try to reach my niece and claim any relation of hers to them, so they gathered all her paperwork to back up any possible situation that might happen. At last they recommended that I should warn the company and the crew that has direct contact with me of the situation, and say that legal measures are to be taken if any of ex-in-laws or ex try to reach me. In the afternoon I called my superior, who does not live in the country, to inform him of all this. He was appalled, and said that if this could have effects on the company or any of the workers, we should call a board meeting with the executive officers from other states to discuss the situation of my division, and the setup of one of the company lawyers to join my team of lawyers in order to defend the interests of the company. I feel embarrassed to say that this morning I sat through a video conference to explain to a board of men that another man and his family can potentially affect someone in our company, because he wants to force me to get pregnant with him, and then hand the child to his brother and sister-in-law. I was ashamed that this could splash on my workplace and the coworkers I'm responsible for, and this whole thing feels so diminishing. Of course my furious ex-in-laws tried to contact me. Ex-mother-in-law sent about 10 voicemails screaming profanities and saying how unholy I am, and that I had the chance to redeem my sinful decisions in life, and had thrown that to garbage, and all the suffering I've been and certainly will be through for the rest of my life is a punishment from God for me being a heathen harlot she had to put up with, and did nothing but love, forgive, and try to guide in God's path. The others contacted with similar messages, but my ex sent me a distraught audio saying he didn't understand how I could be so cruel to him and his family, especially his little brother, and that he couldn't believe I once said I loved him. Because all of this was sent directly to the lawyers. My brother and husband called me again after hearing the heartfelt voicemail of my ex-BF, and said they wanted to talk with me. They suggested I speak with the psychoanalyst that accompanied me through the pregnancy years ago since she knows me, and would know how to help me handle this. I still need to get to her, but I will reach to her by next week, and hopefully we can start doing sessions via video calls. After all this, I want to once again thank all of you that helped me. If it wasn't for you internet strangers, I would probably still be in danger, but with no protection. And now I have apparently 4 lawyers, and I've never felt so loved, and so cared by my family. Even if we're a small one, I'm just happy and grateful to have them in my life. Thank you guys, truly, truly, truly. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.